Welcome to the 14th reading of Ynglinga Saga, and today we're continuing reading about Ingjald Ill-ruler and Önund, King Önund's death, and finally a burning arson at Uppsala. And before we start reading, I just want to remind you that if you go to the link, there's a link in the description with where I keep an updated genealogy of every single person mentioned in Heimskringla, and it's a good thing to have handy as relations get much clearer then, why people are doing different things. Also, it's a quick way to see. I try to organize it so in time you're going vertically, and then the more or less contemporary rulers and families are organized horizontally. So you can see more or less which kings are at more or less the same time, according to Snorri's chronology. Anyway, let's start reading. On Ingjald Ill-ruler. Önund had a son called Ingjald. At that time, Yngvar was king over Fjärhundraland. Fjärhundraland means the land of 400s. So that would be if the king at Uppsala sent word to all the Shire kings that he wanted to gather a war party, then the Fjärhundraland would county or kingdom, it was a small kingdom, would deliver 400 men and I think 16 ships, long ships. He had two sons with his wife. One was called Alf and the other Agnar. They were the same age as Ingjald. All around in Svishul at that time there were Shire kings under Önund, and the ruler of Tiundaland was Svipdag the blind. And Tiundaland, that would be 10 100s, so 1,000 men they would supply, and 40 warships or longships. So the ruler of Tiundaland was Svipdag the blind. There lies Uppsala, and there lies the ting for all Sviar. The ting is like the Nordic. Even today in Denmark, the parliament is called Folketinget. In Norway, it's called Stortinget, and I believe in Iceland it's called Alltinget. So ting was a place where people could have cases brought forth and larger judgments were made. So it's kind of a prototype of a parliament. And that ting for Svishul was in Tiundaland. There were held great loots there, and many kings came for them. These were during midwinter. And one winter, when many people had come to Uppsala, King Yngvar and his sons were there as well. They were both 6 winters old. Alf, King Ingvar's son, and Ingjald, King Önund's son, started playing at children's games, and each should be head of their party. And as they played on, Ingjald was weaker than Ulf. And Ulf thought so ill about it that he cried a lot. Then Gautvid, his foster brother, approached him and took him to Svipdag the blind, his foster father. And he said he was a weakling and he felt clumsy when playing with Ulf, the son of King Yngvar. Then Svipdag answered that this was a great shame. The next day, Svipdag took a wolf's heart and had it fried on a slab, and then gave it to Ingjald to eat. And from that day, he became the cruelest and most ill-tempered of all men. When Ingjald came of age, Önund proposed him to marry Gauthild, the daughter of King Olgaut. He was the son of King Gautrek the Mild, son of Gaut, who has given name to Gautland. Gautland here is like roughly equivalent to Götaland, or more like Västgötaland in Sweden. King Olgaut thought that his daughter would be well married if he was given to King Önund's son, and if he had his father's good temperament. And the maid was sent to Svishjord, and Ingjald held a wedding with her. Önund's death. One autumn, King Önund traveled between his estates with his hird, and came to a place called Himinheid. Himinheid, I can't really find where this is placed. I haven't found any translations where they have notes where they place it. There's a place called Himmelsby in Sweden, which is roughly in the right area, but it's very flat landscape, and what happens afterwards isn't within a flat landscape. In Norway there are many places with the name Himin and Himing. There's one in which kind of fits the bill close to Sauland in Telemark in Norway. And this landscape here fits the description. But it's much further west from the traditional like Göta, Goth areas. Although it's really hard to tell what was Gautland at that time precisely. It's south and west, and west of Svishjord. And you do have, like I mentioned in an episode earlier, in this area by the coast of Agder, which is up towards Telemark, you have several areas with the name Gaut in it. One of the most famous mountaintops is in Norway is in this area. It's called Gaustatoppen. And Gaute is a very common name in Norway. So so perhaps he was this far west, and Gautland was including these areas. It's hard to say. There went a massive avalanche with rubble and clay. The avalanche hit King Önund and his men, and the king met his bane, and many men with him. So says Tjodolf. Was Önund, by Jonaker's sons, held to pay for their pain under Himin mountain, and overwhelmed became the foe of Estland by Risung's hate's arrival. and the protector by lands of bones of Hogne was covered. So this poem says, like all the poems, the word wrapping is a little convoluted. So Önund was Önund by Jonaker's sons held to pay for their pain. So the pain of the Jonaker's sons is like boulders and rocks and avalanche. Jonaker's sons are stones. So he's helped to pay for their pain. Under Himin mountain. So Önund is caught by an avalanche under Himin mountain, and overwhelmed became the foe of Estland, so which is quite straightforward. By Risung's hate's arrival. Risung's hate. Is Risung is a troll. Risa is a troll. So and they're often connected to mountains and rocks and stone fields and such things. So by Risung's hate's arrival. And the protector of Hogne, this is split up, so it says in the protector by lands of bones of Hogne, but it's the protector of Hogne. And this is Önund. By lands of bones covered was. And lands of bones, these are stone fields, like when you walk in the mountains of Norway and Sweden. There are like wide areas, mountains called, like for example Skarv, mountains that are named Skarv. On the top they've been shorn flat by the ice when it was covered in the ice age, and the kind of rubble on top there are these stone fields. Ur, you would say in Norwegian, but they're not like rubble. It's like big boulders, medium-sized boulders, but quite big rocks. So lands of bones. Yeah. And it says also there was a heavy rain and snow was already covering the mountains. This is a common sight. I'm sure for everyone who lives in a mountainous area has seen this, that it rains in the valley, but then usually or many times it will snow up high. So, next chapter. Burning at Uppsala. Ingjald, the son of King Önund, became king at Uppsala. The Uppsala kings were the foremost of kings in Svithjord, there being many shire kings, and the reason was that Odin held reign over Svithjord, and Odin's seat was at Uppsala. The ones that had their seat in Uppsala were monarchs over all of Sweden until the death of Agne, which is a few generations ago. And this is actually quite interesting, because most times we are told that Denmark and Norway unified earlier than Sweden. In Norway you have famously Harald Finehair, Harald Finehair doing it. And Sweden, we hear, is mostly smaller kingdoms. But when people say this, they don't take into account the legendary sagas, which cover the Vendel era, and the times pre-Viking, And if you can go to any museum in Norway or Denmark, and you'll see that the findings from Iron Age are more spectacular often than the findings from the Viking Age. And the findings, same thing with the Bronze Age findings. For some reason, they're more spectacular. The craftsmanship is often better than Viking Age findings. Which seems to say that perhaps these times the monarchies, kingdoms, weren't that small time and haphazard. And I mentioned this a few times before in previous episodes. And in the legendary sagas, here it says specifically that before King Agne, up until King Agne, the monarchs at Uppsala ruled over a much larger area, ruled over Svishul. And likewise, you have legendary sagas of the times of Norway. You have mentioning kings before King Harald that ruled over Norway. And you have the same stories in Denmark. Of course, you have the small kingdoms, Thy in Denmark, Thy, Ven, Syssel, and many different names. And Jylland is separate from Fyn and Zeeland, but the Danish king sometimes rules over the Zeeland and the South Swedish areas and maybe Fyn. Other times, you read in the saga, his kingdom under other kings expands all the way up, covering all of Jylland, for example. So this fluctuates, and it seems to tell that they ruled over however much they could. And sometimes it was a lot, sometimes it was not much, comparatively. So until the death of Agne. At that time, the kingdom was divided among brothers, as has been written before. And since then, the lands and kingdoms were further divided in the branching lineages. So here Snorre says it very direct. But some kings held large forest lands and cleared them, thereby increasing their lands. When Ingjald inherited the country and kingdom, there were many such shire kings, as we have just mentioned. King Ingjald prepared for a great feast at Uppsala and intended to inherit King Önund, his father. He ordered a hall built, one that was just as large and formidable as Uppsala, the main royal hall at Uppsala, and he called it the Hall of Seven Kings. There were 7 high seats in there. I'm translating högsete, or håsete in Norse, högsete in Norwegian, as a high seat. The reason being, normally it would be translated throne, but it has to me, throne is a really big word, and a high seat can of course be really big and nice, but also it just has a different color to it. So King Ingjald sent men all over Svishul and invited kings and jarls and other important men. To the inheritance feast came King Algaut, Ingjald's Måg. A Måg is in-law, a word for in-law. And frende is a word for blood relation. So you would say, like, if you were in-laws, you had mågskap. And it was a holy bond. And among frende, family, usually, as far as I remember, you would count out to what they call like syskenbånd, or cousins, and then going out, second cousin would be called thremenning or tremenning, and third cousin is firmenning, fifth cousin is femmenning, third cousin is firmenning, fourth cousin is femmenning, and so forth. And they would count frendskap out to fem or sexmenning, which is fourth or fifth cousin. Those were blood family. And if you went beyond that, then you were still in family, but it was more similar to a mogskap. Not a blood bond, but still a familial bond. And Yngvar, king of Fjedrudenland, and both his sons, Alf and Angar. No. To the inheritance feast came King Algaut, Ingjaldmog, and Yngvar, king of Fjedrudenland, and both his sons, Alf and Agnar. King Sporsnell of Neriki, King Sigverk of Ottundaland, King Granmar of Sudmannaland had not come. So King Sporsnell of Nerike, this is modern day Nerike in Sweden, and Ottundaland, the land of 800s. This is just east of Mälaren. And this region was to provide 800 men and 20 ships in case of a major war. Södermanland is what's today called Södermanland in Swedish, and this is south of Mälaren. These 6 kings were set up in the new hall. One high seat was empty of the ones King Ingjald had built. All the men who had come there were led into the new hall. King Ingjald had set up his own hird and party in Uppsala. It was the custom at that time, when the inheritance after a king or jarl was being set, that the one who was holding the inheritance feast and was to claim the inheritance would sit at the foot of the high seat until they brought in the drink called the brage drink. He would then stand up facing the brage drink and proclaim a vow and then drink it all up. After that, he would be led to the high seat of his father, and then he was considered to have inherited his father. This was also done now. And when the brage drink was brought in, King Ingjald stood up and took hold of the great bullhorn and swore an oath that he would increase his kingdoms by half in every direction, or else die. He then drank of the horn. When the men got drunk in the evening, King Ingjald told Folkvid and Hulvid, the sons of Svipdag, that they and their men should get armed as they had planned earlier in the evening. They went to the new hall and set fire to it, and the hall started to burn, and in there burned the 6 kings, and all their men, and those that managed to break out were shot and killed. After this, King Ingjald claimed all the lands that the kings had held, and raised tax from them. Yeah. That was King Ingjald Ill-ruler. So just to remind of the running updates on the genealogy, you can find in the link description underneath. And if you enjoy the content, you can always subscribe. It's easier to follow the videos there. I'll be doing the whole Heimskringla as well as other videos related to history, especially Nordic history. So, that was all for this time, and see you next time.